mere hours ago, before we went live, right as I was making the stream, huge news has dropped. News that we must discuss immediately. As you guys know, for those who've been following for, a while, DC Studios under James Gunn and Peter Safran have been making a Sergeant Rock film, directed by Luca Guadagnino of Challengers, Queer, Call Me By Your Name. And originally, Daniel Craig was kind of circling to star, but then he dropped out. He's now moving on to possibly star in Narnia. Who knows? He's working that out. But the question then remained, who's going to play Sergeant Rock? Who is it going to be? Well, according to Deadline, just hours ago, someone is circling final negotiations to play that role. And the person may surprise you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Colin Farrell. And you might be thinking, well, why is that surprising, Dalton? Because he's already the Penguin on the Matt Reeves side of the DC universe, which is technically Elseworlds. It's not connected to the James Gunn DCU, but there have been tons of rumors circulating that it was going to be in the DCU eventually. It was going to get folded in. This may act as evidence that that truly is not part of the plan. I'm just going to briefly read from the Deadline article here. It's basically all we know is that it's happening. After winning practically every single award out there for his turn in the Penguin, Colin Farrell is looking to get back in business with DC, and that's to star in the title role of Sergeant Rock. Deadline goes on to confirm what I just said. Note this is a different part of the DC-verse, with the Penguin attached to Matt Reeves' The Batman sphere, where Sergeant Rock is part of DC bosses James Gunn and Peter Safran's oversee. The two worlds shall never overlap, which is interesting wording for the article, but I don't know if they reached out to comment for that specific wording, if you know what I mean. Scheduling for the film, which Farrell wants to do, we hear, has to be balanced with his busy fall that includes the second season of Apple TV Sugar and Edward Berger's new movie, The Ballad of a Small Player. Farrell takes over for Daniel Craig, who was originally tried to re-team with Guadagnino after they made Queer, which what we were talking about. It then just goes on to discuss Sergeant Rock, which we've discussed ad nauseum on the show. Nick, this thoroughly surprises me. I did not expect this to happen, but I also find it interesting that basically it's kind of both Colin Farrell double dipping a little bit, but if the script is good and he wants to do it and they're going to pay him, fucking go for it. Why not? Who's to stop you? And on James Gunn's side, it's like, well, if we're not going to fold them into the DCU, I can still use them as pieces as part of my DCU and use them for different things. We already know that's true of the DCEU, getting Jason Momoa to play Lobo. Now we're getting Colin Farrell to play Sergeant Rock. So far, he hasn't officially signed on, but usually by the time they're in the trades, it's pretty close to a done deal. I find this fascinating, and I want to get your thoughts. Does this shock you that Colin Farrell is kind of circling Sergeant Rock, or, is this a move that you could see other actors in the Reeves-verse or the old DCEU making?
I mean, no, it doesn't shock me, quite frankly. I didn't think of it, but I wouldn't say that my reaction was shocked right out of the gate. I think it makes sense, right? Because if you look at James Gunn and Peter Safran and what they have with Sergeant Rock as a concept, right? This is a set movie with a set script and a set director, and they're really just looking to cast it out, right? So this thing is all pretty much ready to go. So it makes sense that if you want to fast track it, why wouldn't you keep it in-house with an actor who you already have, who's a massive talent, who has already won every award in this award season that's been occurring for his role in the Penguin, and it could be just a, one for them, one for me type thing. Maybe they are dangling a Penguin season 2, sort of above his head, the inner workings of Hollywood, how that all works, but I think it's a great casting if it's true. I think it's a lot more in line age-wise that with Daniel Craig than, let's say, the Jeremy Allen White, as we had sort of talked before, was kind of like, how do you have this script that's ready to go and complete, and then you cast an actor 30 years younger than the person who was set to lead.
Right. Right.
So I think having I would assume Colin Farrell is probably within 10 years of Daniel Craig. So, it doesn't shock me. He's a phenomenal actor, phenomenal talent. And if you want to keep that talent in-house, why not work on a few different projects? And, it's not a situation, too. Colin Farrell's caked in makeup as the Penguin. It's not like this weird doppelganger-y type shenanigans that are going on. I had to actively keep reminding myself as I was watching the Penguin that was Colin Farrell in makeup.
Yeah, that's true. And as an actor, I'm sure it's appealing to just do a role for this universe, for this world, I should say, this multiverse that's where you're not covered in makeup and you kind of get to do a war movie with an acclaimed director. I see the appeal. And from what we understand, but the budget of this movie is relatively lower than a lot of DC or, blockbuster films. So as an actor, it almost feels like you're diving into something more medium budget, which gives you some more creative freedom in a sense. So, again, I see the appeal on both ways. Like, he's a phenomenal talent. This seems like an interesting project for him. Why not do it? Why not do it at all? And you brought up Jeremy Allen White. We reported that, and I almost completely forgot that he was going to be looked at anyway. But what you're saying makes total sense, and you brought that up when we talked about it before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, guys, I was just fascinated by this, and we're going to be following the story as it develops. But what do you think? Do you think Colin Farrell is a good choice to play Sergeant Rock, or do you think that this will fall through the cracks? What do you think's going on? Let us know in the comments as we move on to our